What is going on, family members? Welcome back to another Overreaction Monday, the season finale. Overreaction Monday. Week 18 is in the books. Playoff field is now set. But we're not going to go playoffs just yet. We're going to hit some, the normal biggest losers, biggest winners of the weekend. Got my guy Mo Murphy of the Up in Flames podcast. What's going on, Mo?
What's up, bro? Hey, back to where we started, huh? You and me.
Yeah.
Right where we started.
Hey, that's all we need. But yeah. In case you guys don't know, Washington Commanders 20-point dub over Dallas Cowboys. Not mentioning that for any specific reason, just want to throw that out there on the back of a rookie quarterback. But but at least you guys are playing next week, which is ultimately what matters.
Might be the only damn game we play, so
it could be. It could be. It also Tampa Bay. We were talking before we went live. Tabos could be fired after next week, depending if they lose and how bad they lose by. He could very well be fired at the end of their playoff run. But with that, let's get into it because we got a little small college football game going on. Nothing crazy, no marquee matchup.
Yeah,
it's a national championship game. So let me get you first. Your biggest winner or winners of the weekend.
I don't want to be cliche, but the Buffalo Bills, bro. Just if I could have wrote a script on how that game should go, really, I'm gonna give it to Nyheim Hines. Really, like that's him and the Buffalo Bills. And Damar Hamlin, obviously that whole situation, he's doing better. He got moved to Buffalo, but just if I could have wrote a story on that game and how it would go, like that would be the perfect movie. So yeah, I got to go Buffalo. Nyheim Hines having 2 kick returns for touchdowns. I think both of them were over 100 yards because he caught both of them out of the end zone. But to open up, the opening kickoff and take it to the crib, like it was almost like, it gave people some static on the football is rigged. That group, like you would almost think like, oh, it was rigged. Like, hey, we're going to let this guy run it back. We're showing a lot of love to the medical team. But I just think the way Buffalo handled this whole week and even pregame, right? Like everybody was for, Damar Hamlin and they made sure and I don't want to say they made sure he lived on because he's living. But they made sure that the moment mattered. And then, to go into the game and bring out the medical team and honor them for their efforts and saving his life, literally saving his life. I just thought it was one of those emotional ones. And so for them to basically, obviously they had the Division I, but for them to win the game, keep New England from getting in the playoffs and the way the game went, to me, it's the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, you really couldn't have scripted a start any better. Obviously, what happened Monday night with Damar Hamlin and obviously going into cardiac arrest on the field, having to be resuscitated, essentially was dead at a certain point. Was released from the hospital earlier today. Is on his way back home to Buffalo. They did put him on IR. However, the Bills worked out a deal with the NFLPA to pay out his full contract because I learned, I was today years old when I learned that NFL contracts come with a standard split if a player ends up going on IR. They get less money, but in this case, he's going to receive his full 4-year contract, guaranteed, no issues there. Because we don't know if he's going to play football again. For him, my biggest winner, and even though they're not playing next week, is the Detroit Lions.
Hell
the
yeah.
season, you want to talk about Hollywood scripted seasons from going, or are they 2 and whatever last year? Having the second overall pick,
1-7 this year, 1-6.
Yep. To be, on the cusp of a playoff berth, fighting for that playoff spot until Seattle won yesterday. Not only all that, to then find out before the game that you've been eliminated from playoff contention, but the team you're playing, bitter rival, basically the daddy of Detroit, daddy of every team in the NFC or in the NFC North, Aaron Rodgers, you get a chance to spoil their season and keep them out of the playoffs, to keep Matt LaFleur out of the playoffs for the first time in his head coaching career as a head coach of the Packers, and you do it in convincing fashion. You do it, control the majority of the game. Um, that run game, Jamal Williams is one of my favorite players in the NFL right now.
He's the
There's
NFL
and
sweetheart right now.
he
Everybody
is,
loves him.
and this goes back to Hard Knocks. Seen him,
Mhm.
I think it was the first or second episode
First episode.
in the huddle crying. That's
Yep.
when I was like, man, that's my guy. Being able, he won me a little bit of money too yesterday, so good on him. But yeah, the Detroit Lions, what Dan Campbell's been able to do with that team, with a quarterback that everybody seemed to have written off, like was looked at as dead money. That's why
I didn't.
Saint.
I get to take
Yeah,
that
that's
one.
right. You didn't.
I was on golf. I get to
Yeah.
take that one. When I told you he'd be in the top 10, no, but did I say he's a good quarterback and Detroit could be bad and not have to look for a quarterback? I always felt like that. So that is one of those. I'm like, that's one of my feel goods. My one hit on my 20 misses.
Hey, sometimes all you need is one. But what he's able to do with Jared Goff, who the Rams viewed as worthless, and went and traded not only him but a bunch of other stuff to get Matt Stafford, and it worked out for LA. They got their Super Bowl win, they got
Mhm.
their ring, good for them. But now Sean McVay's thinking about, I don't know if they're thinking about firing him or if he's thinking about resigning, but he's faced adversity and he's out of there. He's thinking about dipping. So what Dan Campbell was able to do with that team, it makes me excited to watch them in the future. It makes it a little less painful that they're, when they did start 1-7, we were the team that they beat. But again, good for Dan Campbell, good for Jared Goff. Love it for them. All right, who's your biggest loser for the weekend? Because I feel like there were a lot.
Who do you think? The Dallas freaking Cowboys. Like, and I'm not even going to go on a big time rant because I really laughed watching the game last night. And it was just, or yesterday evening, however you want to look at it. But it was because, like, here goes Dallas. Like, we step on the field playing for something. We don't know the Philly score. Like, us, Philly, and San Francisco all play at the same time. All three of us are playing for something. Two of those three teams acted like it. The other one acted like they just didn't care to be out there. Like, and I know it was a look ahead. You could call it a look ahead game and excuse it. But to me, like, even if you're like, okay, Philly's taking care of business, San Francisco, the first half should have been, balls to the wall, guns blazing. Everybody's playing their best football. And if the scores look bad, when we go into halftime, like, we contemplate, okay, Dak, you got one series. Zeke, you got a series. Like, I'm pulling starters. I'm getting some backup guys, some reps. Anybody that we might think could help us in the playoffs at a position we lack, I'm going to get you some reps in the second half. And it didn't go that way at all. I mean, Dak throws a pick six. Really, Dak throws a pick six after basically throwing a dropped interception to the same guy who's a good player, by the way. Don't get me wrong. I do like Fuller, and he is a good player. So good players make great plays, however you want to look at it. But you literally, like, made a mistake, got lucky, turn around and make the same mistake. And so he's thrown an interception in every game since he's been back. He leads the league at interceptions while not even playing a full 17-game season. But it was the effort for me. It was like, you're playing against a rookie quarterback. The defense this should have been a momentum game. Like, get your legs under you and get to moving around and start playing your best football heading into the playoffs. And instead you play like it's a look ahead game. But if Kansas City does that, if Buffalo does that, if Cincinnati does it, even if Philly had did it, like, they earned it up to this point. Where Dallas, like, it's the same story every year, and you're like, they're a really good team. We know that, but that's it. They're really good in the regular season. We have zero expectations for them in the playoffs. And you had an opportunity to show, like, we're fully focused, we're locked in on next week, and we're going to give it our all this week, and maybe put us in a position where we just bench our starters because the scores were kind of out of hand anyways, and they played like that. Like, that was just, bro, it was terrible. Like, there's not a single player I could say that looked out there like he went outside of CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb, the only guy that I would say looked like he came to play football yesterday. Diggs, burnt, toast, terrible. Like, everybody just played back, couldn't get no pressure on the quarterback. Like, you're letting a rookie quarterback who I guess you could say is an audition for him. Well, he's the future for next year, at least. If you look at how he played against Dallas, then you're like, okay, there's our starting quarterback for next year, and we'll figure it out throughout the year. But he won his audition over to get an opportunity to be the starting quarterback. You can't let that happen when You're supposed to be trying to beat the Bucks next week. You're supposed to want to make a deep run. And I know every year it's like the Cowboys can, but they won't. But like you're supposed to show that you're focused and you aren't. Like, so it's there were a lot of losers, and obviously it's personal for me being a Cowboys fan, but it's the Cowboys, bro. You could have lost in a good game and you came to play and Washington just was like, you know what, we're not gonna let y'all get rolling. And I would have respected it. But to come out there and basically get whooped and act like you didn't even want to play football, like I can't respect that. Like y'all going into Sunday, I woke up Sunday morning and I'm like, we're good, we're gonna win. I ain't think it'd be easy, but just we're gonna win the game, we're gonna look good, and I'm not worried about Tampa. I went to bed last night wondering like how bad is Tampa gonna beat us on Monday night, and then it pissed me off even worse when I found out we play on Monday night. Like I know every game is by itself, but we're on Monday night, so everybody gets to they get to wake up on Monday and talk about who's going, who disappointed, whatever, and then have to break down the Cowboys and Bucks, and it's going to be insane. And Tuesday could probably be a very bad day for me. So yeah, it's Dallas.
So if you don't see Mo on any shows Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of next week, you'll understand why.
I'll show face. I'll show face. I'll show face after Ohio State loss. I'll show face. I ain't gonna run.
Yeah, but I mean that's against Georgia. Not like y'all went up against Pat Mahomes yesterday.
Yeah, but we could have
won.
You like we won the game. So that's that. Yeah, that's why I'm like, but I'll show face. I take my loss. If Dallas loses, and we do a show on Tuesday, I'll show face. I'll be here.
Not something you're not used to.
Yeah, exactly.
Network for the last couple of years.
Exactly.
I have two losers. First one is going to be the city of Houston. I understand, and we had a conversation with a coworker today about they shouldn't have gone for two. They should have just kicked the field goal, went for the tie. The only people that care about draft positioning is the front office. Head coaches do not care. Players do not care. They've gotten to that level of being competitive, being winners, and always wanting to win. The reason Houston is my biggest loser, one of my biggest losers, because the way they have done their last two head coaches. Not only that, the way they have done their last two black head coaches. I cannot think of anything worse, more, I wouldn't say obvious, because you can make the argument Lovie Smith isn't a good head coach, even though Rex Grossman has a Super Bowl appearance under his belt because of Lovie Smith. But to fire them after back-to-back seasons, one season each, and I get it. Who was their coach last year? I forgot his name.
David Culley.
David Culley. They admitted he wasn't their first choice.
Mm-hmm.
They fully admitted that. We expected him to get fired after one season. They didn't want him anyways. You go out and get Lovie Smith. You give him Davis Mills to work with, and nothing against Davis Mills. He's not a top tier quarterback. He's not a Patrick Mahomes. He's probably better than Carson Wentz. I'll take him over Carson Wentz.
Maybe.
But we see what Carson Wentz has done, where he's headed. He's headed to maybe a backup position. He might be Stidham's backup in Vegas next year. Who knows? But giving him Davis Mills and expecting him to make a playoff run, to be competitive, to be as draft poor as that team is, because you gave up all your draft picks for Laramie Tunsil.
Mm-hmm.
I think you got picks back for Deshaun Watson.
Mm-hmm.
But still, you still have so many holes on that team. To fire him after one season, it's not a good look, and I don't know what coach is going to want to go to Houston after what they just did the last two seasons.
Yeah, and I'm with you. Oh, my bad.
No. I was gonna go on to my next one, but go ahead.
Oh yeah, so I'm with you on that, and my thing is because you fired him based on what? Like, what was the expectation for the Houston Texans? And if you're the owner and GM or whatever, and your expectation was to be a winning team, well, then you out of your rabbit ass mind. Like, yes, you should want to win. Yes, we want to be competitive, but you also, if I can see it, you can see it. Everybody else in the world can see it. You also know, man, we are so many pieces away from even being an adequate football team. You're probably going to get your quarterback this year. That you hope. And quarterback's such a hit or miss. Just because you tell me he's the guy doesn't mean he's going to be the guy, no matter who it is. Stroud, Young, Levis, Anthony Richardson, it doesn't matter. Nobody can guarantee me that they're going to be a great pro because it's all at random when it comes to quarterback. But I feel like we knew Cully was like a bridge. Like it was just like signing a veteran quarterback. Like, we're going to draft a rookie. We're going to have you for the year. You're going to train them, teach them, and then we're going to move on from you and go to our young guy. And so Cully, we kind of understood that. But then when hiring Lovie Smith, like another bridge quarterback, another bridge coach. So now you're going to go and you're going to interview these guys, and basically you're going to get somebody who's just willing to take a head coaching job just so they can move from being a coordinator to a head coach and get some experience to basically audition for the next team looking for a head coach. This organization has been bad for a while, especially how they operate as an organization. I mean, the whole thing with Deshaun Watson and then, DeAndre Hopkins, and you lost your beloved, like JJ Watt left. Like, you lost guys who had a lot of value to that, and you just basically got rid of them, gave up, moved on, and tried to rebuild. And then you're like, okay, we're gonna fire the coach, but like, what's the answer now? Like, now this head coach is gonna be tied to whatever quarterback they draft, which could be a win. Like, if I'm a team and I'm like, oh, I could get Bryce Young in, take this head coach job, and I love him. All right, cool. Or if I'm like, I want CJ Stroud, and I'll be tied to my success and me, my job will be tied to CJ Stroud, but I'm good with that because I love him, then that's cool. But at the same time, the way they've operated, like, is it them as an organization? Like, it's not really the players on the field. You're rebuilding, but it's them as an organization. That front office is terrible. Like, it is just horrible, bro. And you're sending the wrong message. And I hate that it had to be two back-to-back black coaches that had to get fired and done the way they were.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that doesn't sit well with me, because you look at somebody like Cliff Kingsbury, who got 10 months ago got an extension through the 2027 season, who was just fired this morning. You just signed this, what you thought was a franchise quarterback in Kyler Murray, to this huge deal. Put some BS homework clause in that gets leaked, and now he's hurt, torn ACL. He's done. What is he going to look like next year? Is the coach going to want to come in and be tied to Kyler Murray for the next however many years his extension was for? It's going to be hard to trade him, because even in a world of small quarterbacks, Kyler Murray is a small dude. You put him next to Baker Mayfield, you put him next to any of these other quote unquote small quarterbacks in the league, Kyler Murray looks small. So what coach is going to want to come in and be tied to that? But my second loser is the rest of the NFC North, because with the Houston Texans winning, the Bears going up, moving up to that number one draft pick, they don't need a quarterback. At a lot of points in this season, Justin Fields was balling. He has progressed as a thrower. He's lightning as a runner. I think they feel good about where they're at the quarterback position. Now you're looking at, needs, team needs. They have a lot of needs. You know what fills those needs? Draft picks. You look at fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth, I believe. All those teams need quarterbacks. Colts, possibly the Cardinals, the Raiders. Who are the other ones? I just had them up. You have Colts at 4, Seattle at 5. You could argue they need a quarterback. They should at least be looking. Detroit doesn't need it at 6. 7 is Vegas. 8 is Atlanta, who needs one. 9 is Carolina, who needs one. And that's it. So outside
Does
the top
Atlanta
3,
need one?
who?
You think Atlanta needs one?
They should be considering.
I'd think about it, but I'm not moving on from Desmond Ridder unless I'm getting Stroud or Young. That
Which
would
you
just
could.
be you possibly, but for me, if I'm Atlanta, I'm looking at filling out the defense or something else, only because I've seen enough from Ridder to be like he's okay, and I also could be like, if he's not that good, if I'm somebody who need a quarterback and I don't need one desperately, I got a young guy like Ridder, I'm waiting until next year. Wait till C-Dub or Drake May come in the picture. But that's just me. That's why I would be at. Is like, all right, if I can't get Stroud or Young, I'm out on these guys, and give me C-Dub or Drake May next year, and possibly Quinn Ewers.
So other than that, the rest of the teams definitely need a quarterback. Indianapolis, Arizona might need one. So Houston is going to have to compete with all those teams to try to move up just that one spot. I don't remember what Chicago gave San Francisco a few years ago to draft Mitchell Trubisky, but it's probably gonna cost a lot. Um, but the draft haul that the Bears should be able to get from whoever they end up trading with should be able to set themselves up for the next 5 years. 5 years after next year. So the next 6 to 7 years, being able to build their team, bring up the guys, assuming they draft correctly, obviously. But what they have the potential to do, the NFC North should be scared. Rodgers, I don't think he's coming back, not to Green Bay at least. I think he's done there. Minnesota, we saw late in the season, they don't have that dog in them. They faltered late in the season. Not a lot of people really even talking about them anymore. And then Lions, I think it could be a Lions and Bears, back and forth for the next 5 to 10 years. I think
It
that's
could be.
very realistic.
Yeah, it definitely could be. And if I'm Chicago, like not to make this a draft podcast, but if I'm Chicago, I'm the farther back I can go for a team is the more interested I am. It's about to be a bidding war. If I'm Chicago, I create a bidding war and I take the highest bidder for that number one pick. Because unless you feel like you need a quarterback, unless you're thinking about moving on from Justin Fields, which is possible because that front office didn't draft Justin Fields. I think he showed you enough that you're at least willing to give him a year and go on the theory of like, okay, if we put some weapons and an adequate team around him, now let's really evaluate what he looks like. And I think next year could be a full-blown evaluation year for Justin Fields. But I think the Bears are in a great spot because it's going to be a bidding war for that number one pick. And essentially, I don't think there's a player out there, if I'm not taking a quarterback, that I'm not willing to move back about. Like, yes, Jalen Carter could be a monster. There's a few guys, but if I'm Chicago, it's a bidding war. I'd establish it today. The number one pick's up for grabs. Y'all got, 3 months to cook up something and send it to me before draft day or on draft day when the clock starts. Like, y'all got 3 months. If I'm them, I'm giving every organization as much time as possible. And I'm weighing everything. And I don't trade it until draft day, but I'm giving you 3 months to cook up your best offer. And I'll tell you, hey, when the Colts call, I'll be like, the Raiders just offered me this. So either come back to the table or no, you not getting it. That's what I would do. If I'm them, I go in a full out bidding war and I make it known that I'm willing to trade the pick today. So I give everybody 3 months of full communication. And I will tell you, I will be straight up with you. There are teams who have out-offered you, outbid you, and you either got to come back to the table harder or you're just not getting the number one pick. So I think the Bears could play it smart and really, really get a lot of draft capital back and be able to build a team for the future. So I'm definitely with you on that. Like, Chicago could take this number one pick. Boy, you'd almost think like they got Victor Wembanyama in the bag. Essentially, like they could get that kind of haul for this number one pick.
Yeah, I think it's going to be scary what they're able to do. So then what happens if nobody's willing to overpay? Because I think somebody is going to overpay. They always do, especially for a quarterback.
You will.
Everybody overpays. What happens if they don't, though?
Then you keep the number one pick and take the best player you feel like. You take whoever you feel like is the best player in the draft. You need everything. I wouldn't say take a wide receiver with your number one pick, but essentially that number 32 pick is the beginning of the second round now. So essentially, if we looked at it, that'd be like 2 first-round picks, and you gave that up for Chase Claypool. So I would be trying to trade back, looking at receivers, looking at guys on the defense. But if somebody's not willing to give my asking price, I'll just take the best player available. Go take Jalen Carter or whoever. Like, whoever you think can make an impact. Go get a guy who can either go get the quarterback or protect the quarterback, because you need both. So I get whoever I think the best guy to go get the quarterback or plug up the middle, or I go get the best offensive lineman and we start building from there. But they're going to hope they could get rid of that number one pick because they gave up the first pick of the second round essentially for Chase Claypool. And so now, like, they got shafted. They should have just held pat. I don't know what they traded for Chase Claypool in the first place anyway.
Yeah, it's not like they were a receiver away from doing
exactly.
anything.
You weren't at a position to win nothing. Should have just, all right, we're rocking with Fields for the rest of the season, full-blown tank, get as much draft capital. You got rid of Roquan Smith. I don't remember exactly what they got from that. So you already started gaining draft capital. Now I'll just start unloading everybody. Everybody gone. Like, except my quarterback and my key pieces on the offensive line out. I got rid of David Montgomery. He would have left. Like, I'm getting all this draft capital because I, as a GM, am starting a rebuild around Justin Fields, and it starts this offseason. So, but they have a luxury getting the number 1 pick. Even with the number 2 pick. Had Houston lost, they still would have been sitting nice with the number 2 pick.
So I think we discussed, I don't know if this was before we went live or not, but there's 4 coaching openings. There's the Carolina Panthers, Arizona Cardinals, because Kingsbury was just fired today. Who are the other ones? Why am I drawing a blank on this?
Texans, Cardinals, Panthers, and Broncos.
So those 4 teams all have openings at the head coach position. I would assume it's pretty obvious who the most appealing opening is right now, right?
Who is it?
Denver Broncos.
It depends on what you've. Okay, I'll say yes for the simple fact Kyler Murray tore his ACL. So we don't know how long that process is going to be. We don't know when he's going to play next year. If he even plays next year, I'm sure he'll play, but we don't know how long he's going to be out. So the timetable of when he returns, because I would think the Cardinals would be pretty enticing if I know I'm getting Kyler Murray and I feel like Kyler Murray is a pretty adequate quarterback. I'd rather coach Kyler Murray than coach Russell Wilson. To be honest, all the drama around Denver, I'd rather go. I know there was drama around Kyler Murray, but you almost think like there was an incompetent coach where, with Russell Wilson, like old teammates were speaking on how toxic the environment got in Seattle because of Russell Wilson. So I would rather coach Kyler Murray than Russell Wilson, but Denver does have a pretty decent defense. But I just think a lot of things in Denver are overvalued. Like, you tell me, oh, when Russell Wilson got here, these weapons, like, bro, since when did Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton become God? I said when Russell Wilson left, I said he gonna miss DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. Like, Jeudy and Sutton cool, but I was like, he gonna miss DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. Y'all can tell me them weapons all day long. He gonna miss Chris Carson, Metcalf, Lockett. He gonna miss all that.
Actually, you were actually one of the most vocal anti-Russell Wilson people that I knew at the time. You were anti-Russell Wilson.
Denver, like him going to Denver did not wow me. Like everybody else was like Super Bowl contenders. Look how many nationally televised games they got. And I'm like, all right, bro, they're not a quarterback away. We're not going to, okay, Teddy Bridgewater ain't that good, but we're not going to act like Russell Wilson is just, he's not a top 10 quarterback anymore. And I've loved Russell Wilson. And you remember there was one time where I'm like, Seattle will win the division because Russell Cook last year. And I'm like, Russell Cook, he got hurt. So it kind of saved that take a little bit. But it's like, Russell Wilson was not where I'm like, oh, because they're telling me weapons. All the reasoning that everybody was giving me was like, bro, Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton or Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. That's easy. Give me Seattle's receiver. It was the defense that had everybody excited for Denver. Was like, oh, you give Russell Wilson that defense because Seattle's defense wasn't that good. But now you look at how they killed the draft and you're like, bro, they got some, Jamal Adams goes down and they still got good defensive players everywhere. They got a steal as a rookie corner. So Seattle's just built better. And then obviously they were better coached too. Like Pete Carroll 100%. Proved that. Yeah, Pete Carroll proved that.
1,000%. I just love, not even gonna lie, it's kind of off topic, but since we're on the subject of Seattle Seahawks, I love the fact that Geno Smith broke Russell Wilson's franchise passing record in one season. Like, and I was the biggest Russell Wilson fan, I think, at this network a couple years ago. I had him MVP. Like, I wanted him back in DC. I was considering, when the whole thing with Dan Snyder investigation was going on, I was strongly considering jumping ship and becoming a full-blown Seattle Seahawks fan, mainly because of Russell Wilson. And to see I love what happened, just because I think there's a lot of truth in what people like Richard Sherman and Doug Baldwin say, that Russell Wilson wasn't a good teammate. He just wasn't. But other than that, we're almost done. What's the game looking like? Oh,
it's bad. It's bad.
It's real bad.
It's bad. Like, we ain't missing much. So whatever the next topic is, I'm ready. It's bad.
So what is your overreaction? Give me one or two overreactions for non-playoff teams, just the teams that aren't playing next weekend.
Oh man. All right. So for non-playoff teams, um, like okay, so I would tell Detroit, don't fool yourself, stick with Jared Goff. Don't look to move on. Maybe restructure his contract, open up a little money. I think you're pretty good where you're at. Solid draft, put you in the playoffs next year. I mean, you were, a Seattle win in overtime away from, basically being in the playoffs. So stay the course, keep the roster together. Uh And then like the Falcons, I would say unless when you go through the next 3 months and your guy is Anthony Richardson or you fall in love with Will Levis, stick with Desmond Ritter, build a team to be ready for C Dub or Drake May to come in. Like, and maybe if you start realizing like you're not going to be that good, then maybe play the tank game a little bit. Because I think the quarterbacks next year will be better than this year. So, like the Falcons, I would rock with Desmond Ritter because maybe you do have the future in him. Like, he wasn't the greatest, but he wasn't all the way bad for me either when watching him. Like, okay, he could do a little something. This is a bad roster. And then the Washington Commanders, just it's not even a dig at them. I would see what Sam Howell looks like next year. Like, if I don't want to say it's not an overreaction. I guess more this is advice for teams that aren't making the playoffs. But if I'm the Washington Commanders, I look and I'm like, you know what? We're gonna rock with Sam Howell. He looked decent against Dallas, which is a decent defense. Terry McLaurin looked like, they had some rapport there. Jahan Dotson made a play or two. Like, so it looked like he's been working with the receivers because, I mean, he connected with Terry McLaurin twice on big plays immediately. And so that's who I'd be worried about keeping happy is like, okay, my wide receiver one, if he got rapport with Sam Howell, then at the very least, he'll be happy. He signed that extension. So I would see what Sam Howell is about before I just go gung-ho on getting a quarterback. And they know better than we do because they're in the building, they're at practices. But from what I've seen from Sam Howell, he could build off that and at least be decent. He could at least be a bridge quarterback until like you find yourself getting a C-Dub or Drake May or, they're still about to be superstars in college over the next 2 to 3 years of quarterbacks. I don't think quarterback is your biggest need right now. I mean, you were almost in the playoffs with Taylor Heineke. So if I'm Washington, it's like I'm starting to build around and maybe see if Sam Howell's the guy. I just wouldn't go. I wouldn't be happy with a quarterback because if it's not Stroud or Bryce Young, I'm kind of out on all of them anyway.
So, wouldn't you? Can you make the argument that you're almost a playoff team with Taylor Heineke? So you are a quarterback away. Like we just had a competent quarterback, and we've said this for basically the last 3 seasons since Rivera's been here. If this team had a competent quarterback, we're a playoff team. We're a 9-10 win team every single year.
But are you buying into a rookie quarterback saving you next year?
No.
Because that's my thing is like, if you are a quarterback, now, if you go get Jimmy Garoppolo, now don't get me wrong. I'm more talking about the draft. Now, if you tell me Jimmy G's going to be at Washington, who else? I mean, who knows? If y'all was trying to go for Aaron Rodgers, I don't know if he'd go to Washington, but I'm just saying like, but if you're going for like a Jimmy G or something like that, then okay, cool. But I'm not like, for me, I'm not drafting a quarterback. Like drafting a quarterback is out the window this year. I'm either rocking with Sam Howell or I'm going to get like Garoppolo, which I think Jimmy Garoppolo puts them in the playoffs. Like y'all are a playoff team with Jimmy Garoppolo. Are you a Super Bowl contender? No. But maybe Jimmy Garoppolo in a solid draft does put you where like you're competing for the division with Dallas and Philly and New York. I mean, this has potential to be a really good division for a while now because everybody seems like they're starting to find their identity and where they need to nick and knack some things up where it could be competitive because this division was hella competitive all year. There was a point in time we thought all 4 of them were going to go to the playoffs and it was realistic. So, I mean, if you get Jimmy G, I think that would be the perfect guy to get. But if not, I'm rocking with Sam Howell. I'm not addressing quarterback in the draft at the very least if I'm watching. I'm not even thinking about it. Maybe if I go 3rd or 4th round and there's a guy who kind of fell, maybe if Hendon Hooker because of his ACL, like, all right, I'll go get him. And, if he's back healthy at some point by training camp, then maybe he competes with Sam Howell. We'll see what he looks like in the preseason. And it's a year-long quarterback competition. But I'm not going in the 1st round when I could get a bona fide future star player elsewhere, another corner, a safety, another guy to go. Your defense don't even really need that much work. I go get an O-line and give me one more receiver maybe. Like I know they got Dotson and they got McLaurin and they got Curtis Samuel. So if you look at it, they got a good team and they are a quarterback away. I'm just not addressing it in the 1st round is my thing. Is if Jimmy G is there, cool. I like Washington next year. I'll be like, shit, any one of them could win the division, but I'm not addressing it unless I could get CJ Stroud. Somehow, some way, Stroud fell to me. Maybe I entertain it there, but I don't see that happening.
Yeah, I do agree with you. I think we are a quarterback away. I don't think we address it early in the draft. I think if someone like Hooker, obviously, like you said, he falls because of his knee. I think if Stetson Bennett is maybe there in the sixth, seventh round, possibly undrafted, why not? Why
Taylor
not?
Heineke Jr. Like he's Taylor Heineke Jr.
I saw a little bit of Taylor Heineke and Sam Howell yesterday, so I'm not
But then
at
you
this
just
point.
have a whole roster full of Taylor Heinekes. Like you got Sam
One,
Howell, Heineke, and Stetson Bennett. Let me just get a whole roster full of the same guy.
and so that way you can because each one is good for a set number of games. Taylor Heineke is good for 5 or 6 games, and then the wheels start to fall off. After the sixth game, throw Sam Howell in, give him 6 games. After that, put Bennett in. But if somebody like Jimmy G, maybe Derek Carr, I don't know if I would really want Derek Carr.
Consider Carr. I would consider
I,
Carr.
I wouldn't. The only reason I'm hesitant on Carr is because I'm probably gonna have to trade for him, and I
Well,
don't
yeah.
want to trade and take on that huge contract. Someone like Aaron Rodgers, maybe would he want to come here? I doubt it. He'd probably want to go. He honestly would probably want to go either San Francisco or maybe Vegas. Go
Mhm.
back with Devontae Adams. Um, but I definitely would take him if it wasn't too much money. Tom Brady, is he going to be available? Probably. Would I want him? I don't know. Maybe
I
maybe
want
it's just
a guy with a few years left in under his legs at least. Like at least 2 to 3 years. I know you got some kind of juice where Brady, bro, Father Time wins. It don't matter how long you prolong it. And I know Brady's the one who like he prolonged it. LeBron prolongs it. Like some of those guys like they get up there in age and you're like Father Time's gonna punch them in the face and they keep winning. But Father Time never loses at some point. It just you're prolonging the Father Time clock. That's all you're doing. So Derek Carr I would consider. I don't think it's going to cost a lot. The way the Raiders they benched him, he left the team. Like he's not even going to get you a first round pick. Like the Raiders aren't getting a first round pick for Derek Carr. And the way they structured his contract, it's actually not going to cost the team a lot of money to take on Derek Carr. And I very well could just see everybody sitting waiting. If I'm Washington, I'm interested in Derek Carr, unless I'm starting to hear that he wants to go somewhere else. And now I got to trade for him to get him. I think everybody's going to be waiting for the Raiders to cut him. And then they're going to get in like a bidding war, but it's not going to be, oh, we're paying them $45-50 million. Like the bidding war will probably be 25-30 over the next, it'll probably be like a 3 year, $60 million, $75 million contract, which isn't that bad for a quarterback. And I think Derek Carr on Washington's a playoff team. They got a defense, they got weapons. The Raiders ain't got no defense. And they got weapons, but all their weapons in and out of the lineup. Washington got weapons, they got some running backs. Their offensive line could get better, but I can address that in the first round. Get Derek Carr. I got a good defense. You seen y'all got a good defense. Derek Carr takes Washington to the playoffs. Super Bowl contenders, no. Playoffs, yes. And possibly takes them to win the division. Because Philly ain't about to go 14-3 every year. Like they're going to drop down to about that 11-6, 12-5, just like Dallas. They'll probably hover around that. But I can see Carr winning 2 to 3 more games would put you at what, 9, 8, 10 wins, 11 wins. If 2 to 3 more games, y'all win, and you don't tie against the Giants with Derek Carr. So there's like 3 to 4 wins right there.
yeah. I think I have two overreactions. My first one is that Ron Rivera might actually buy himself a little bit more time if he goes through and actually fires Scott Turner and goes and gets him an up and coming, quote unquote, offensive savant, offensive genius, someone like how Kevin LaFleur was looked at, how Sean McVay was looked at, how Mike McDaniels was looked at, how Kyle Shanahan was looked at, all coincidentally, all former members of Washington staff at one point or another. If he can go and get himself somebody like that, I think he might buy himself the the fifth year of his contract, and depending on what he's able to do there, might be able to get him a second contract under the new owner. But that first relies heavily on if he's actually going to fire Scott Turner, which I don't think he is anymore. The way he was talking throughout the week, it sounded like he was going to, because he had mentioned the you know the struggles. He brought up the injuries, which every offense has injuries. but still these offensive coordinators are still coming, or these play callers are still coming up with. Look at San Francisco. Their play caller, their offensive coordinator, they went through three quarterbacks. They're arguably the favorite to win the NFC right now. So you can't use injuries as an excuse. But I think if he was going to fire him, he would have fired him already. Um, but he said he's going to look at the staff, evaluate the staff, this week and into next week. So I don't think Scott Turner's going anywhere. Ron Rivera, I've said this time and time again. Ron Rivera is loyal to a fault, and he worked under North Turner. So I
Mhm.
feel like he owes that to him a little bit. But if he does fire him, he goes and gets him an offensive genius. He might buy himself his fifth year because I that's really the only thing that's holding us back is the offense.
Mhm.
Go get us a creative play caller, somebody who can work their scheme, put their scheme to highlight their players' strengths and not the other way around. And I think you might be able to do something. My second one, and I try to admit my faults and my wrongs as much as I can. I have said stuff about this coach that I regret, that I meant at the time, but I now understand are wrong. This morning, I was ready to say he is the greatest coach of all time. Um, Actually, you know what? No, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. Mike Tomlin is the greatest head coach of all time in the history of the NFL, and here's why. Before you make that face. Sure, he doesn't have the accolades. He doesn't have the Super Bowl wins. He doesn't have the MVP quarterbacks under his belt, under his tutelage. You know what he does not have that every single other head coach has, that has coached as long as he had, or
A
as long as
losing.
he has? A losing record.
Mhm.
You cannot tell me, and I have said this. I said he was overrated. I think 2 seasons ago, or might have as early as last season, I went on this show on Overreaction Monday and said Mike Tomlin is not a good head coach because he won his Super Bowl with Bill Cowher's guys. And once a lot of Bill Cowher's guys retired, he hasn't done. Yes, he's won divisions, he's made playoff runs, but he hasn't won the Super Bowl. He hasn't been back to a Super Bowl since they lost in 2011 to the Packers. But the fact that you've coached as long as he has, I think he's the second longest tenured coach behind Bill Belichick at the moment,
Mhm.
to never have had a losing record. And yesterday clinched that feat again with a win over the Browns, finishes the season 9-8 with Duck Hodges and Kenny Pickett. Now Kenny Pickett may become this great quarterback that maybe they saw in him, why they drafted him in the first round. Who
He's
knows?
solid. He's solid.
But the fact that you're able to do that year in and year out with an aging Ben Roethlisberger who retired far past when he should have,
Mhm.
probably one of the biggest downfalls of superstar quarterbacks I've ever seen in my lifetime. Most quarterbacks do retire later than they should. Perfect case in point, Tom Brady. Probably should retire this year. He probably won't. He'll probably have 2 or 3 more years. The amount of time that Ben Roethlisberger prolonged his career did in some aspects hurt his legacy. I think it hurt his legacy a little bit because a lot of the people are only going to remember those last 4 to 5 years where he's always hurt. He was slow, couldn't really throw, couldn't throw the deep ball anymore. That's what they're going to remember. So I do think it hurt his legacy a little bit. But then to do it with Duck Hodges and Mason Rudolph after he got mollywopped by Miles Garrett on on national television, and then this year with Kenny Pickett and again with Duck Hodges, like you can't tell me this guy doesn't know what he's doing. You put him, you put this guy in charge of the Washington Commanders. Let him pick a quarterback. I promise you, we're making deep playoff runs more often than not. You put him with the roster that the Commanders have right now, we're divisional round for sure, a couple conference title games here and there, and maybe a Super Bowl appearance. If a couple plays go our way, if the ball bounces our way once or twice. You cannot tell me this man is not the greatest coach of all time.
Bro, I easily can tell you he's not the greatest coach of all time. He's not even a top 5 head coach of all time. Not yet. Not. He can win. But here's the thing. All right, he wins, like he doesn't know how to lose, essentially. Like, but he does lose. But I'm saying, like, he doesn't know how to be so bad. He doesn't let his team fall so much off from the wayside. He's never really had to rebuild or wouldn't allow a rebuild. Really, Big Ben essentially saved him, because as bad as he was towards the end, he never had to rebuild with a quarterback. So therefore, like, he never had to start back over. Pittsburgh is sought after. People play in Pittsburgh. They have this identity. That's been the identity, yours and my whole lifetime, no matter who was at the helm of head coaches. They do right by their head coaches. They stay there for a while. I think, don't they have like the least amount of head coaches in, like, for a franchise? Like, they stick with them, they ride with them, because typically most of them don't lose or lose too often to where the point, like, yeah, we got to get rid of this guy 2 losing seasons in a row. This isn't the standard. But to call him the greatest head coach of all time, like, you put him over Don Shula, you put him over Bill Belichick, who got 6 of them things, and you can credit Tom Brady all you want. And that is,
and I will.
And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with saying Bill Belichick is by default the GOAT because he had the greatest quarterback of all time. I'm cool with that. Is he even the greatest black head coach of all time? Is he better than Tony Dungy, who got 2 of them things? One with Tampa, and I know he inherited John Gruden's roster, so you won't give him...
No. Other way around.
Other way around. So, okay, so he got 1 of them things because he walked off. That's right. My bad. It was the other way around. Oh, but is he better than Tony Dungy? Like, are we sure he's better than Tony Dungy? Like, the greatest... Landry existed. Jimmy Johnson existed. And it's not a knock on Tomlin. It's really not. Is he a very, very, very good head coach? Is he going to go to the Hall of Fame as a head coach? I would say yes. He would have my vote, and I wouldn't think twice about it. When he's eligible to be in the Hall of Fame as a head coach, he gets the nod for me. I'm not arguing that. But the greatest head coach of all time, and I'm just warning, when we leave out of this is going in the chat. Like, we are going, the national championship is dog crap right now. It's a blowout. So everybody's watching this game with plenty of time on their hands. We are going to talk about this because Mike Tomlin is not the greatest head coach of all time.
He at the very least deserves to be in the conversation, because yes, again, people like Belichick, he's by default the GOAT because he has the most rings. And I will credit Brady a lot, because after Brady left, we talked about that a lot. Did Brady make Belichick, or did Belichick make Brady? What did Brady go and do in his first season away from Belichick? Goes and wins the Super Bowl. Now, given BA, I think, tailored his system around Tom's strength a little bit, tailored the system to him. But Bill Belichick, has he been back to the playoffs since then? I don't think so. They were a game away from making it.
He went to the playoffs last year.
Oh, he was in the playoffs last year?
He got smacked, but he went to the playoffs.
But you mean to tell me that somebody like Mike Tomlin, who can, like you said, does not know how to lose, and I can't remember who he said it to, but he was talking to somebody about drafting them, had to be a high draft pick. And he said, yeah, I'm glad I wasn't in a position to be able to draft you. Like, he doesn't do that. He consistently wins with...
But he's got 1 Super Bowl.
And I understand that. And I get that. So maybe I should tailor what I said to, he is the best analytical, or maybe X's and O's coach of all time.
I don't think with him, though, it's X's and O's. I think it's the guy. Like, I think...
He's just a motivator.
A guy, yeah. And like, he gets guys to play for him. Any player that's ever played under Mike Tomlin, I've never heard a ill word ever. Nothing negative towards him at all. All they got to talk about is how he saved them, how he helped them, how he he cares about his play. He cares about the person, not just the player. It's not just the fact that you have a Steelers uniform. Think about it with Damar Hamlin. Bro, he's known the kid since he was 12. Never donned a Pittsburgh Steelers jersey. And he has a relationship with the kid. So it's like Mike Tomlin, the man, maybe he's the greatest man to ever grace this earth by how people talk about him. But as far as greatest head coach, I'm sorry. Hardware does matter, and you got to have more than one before I put you in the GOAT conversation. I mean, there's coaches who have won multiple Super Bowls. Like, I wouldn't put him over Bill Parcells, Jimmy Johnson, Don Shula, Bill Belichick, Tom Landry. Like, I would go, I won't say the list is long, but there's a very secure list that, like, maybe when it's all said and done, because Mike Tomlin's really not old. I think he's in his 50s. So, like, he essentially, he's probably like 53, something like that. So he essentially could coach for another 20 years. And will it be with the Steelers? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, kind of tough to fire a coach who just hasn't had a losing record. Like, but at some point, like, going 9-8 will get played out, and you're like, okay, there's got to be better out there, or we're going to start with something new and change our identity, because 9-8, 10-7, and not making the playoffs, or 10-7 and losing in the first round, like, that standard has to raise at some point. But even still, like, if Kenny Pickett is the guy, now he's attached, he has his franchise quarterback for the next 10 to 12 years. And Kenny Pickett is pretty good. He doesn't have to be Mahomes or Josh Allen to be a franchise quarterback. He could be Kirk Cousins and get you to a few playoffs and maybe make a playoff run or something. Like, you don't have to have your franchise guy and say, I got the next Mahomes. So if Kenny Pickett is his guy, his job, he's going to be Steelers coach for quite a long time. But, bro, the greatest coach of all time? Woo! Spicy. Expect nothing less from Cruise Island, though, but woo, spicy.
I just feel like, and this is the thing that you guys told me repeatedly last year, and I finally came around. The fact to not have a losing record, especially in that division is competitive year in and year out. To not have a losing record, I think that to me is one of the greatest feats of all time. And it could be because he's a motivator. It could be the X's and O's. I think it's more the X's and O's.
I think it's motivator, but that's cool. Like, if that formula works, then it works. And if you're like, if you know, like, I could get guys to play for me, and I'm not the greatest X's and O's guy, but my coaching staff is. Steelers don't fire everybody. He pretty much like, yes, guys move on and get jobs, but they don't just fire people. He ain't just around here moving on from OC to OC to OC. And he's kind of the guy that, like, a OC comes with me and then gets a head coach's job, or DC come with me and get a head coach's job. I'm here to give out opportunities, and I want the Steelers to be the basis of your success, and then you move on from there and elevate. He is one of those guys, but, like, I don't think it's as much X's and O's. I think he hires a great staff. He puts everything around him, so his strengths are his strengths, and his weaknesses he leaves to guys who don those jobs, which is fine, because that's what you're supposed to do as a great head coach. Not everybody. Bill Belichick is a great defensive guy, terrible offensive guy. You've seen that this year. Their offense stinks. Didn't even know to put a real offensive coordinator. You had Joe Judge and Matt Patricia, two guys who were terrible coaches, and yeah, we're going to let you call plays for our quarterback who's borderline could be a backup. So, like, but he's a great defensive mind, and he always going to scheme defensively, and you know the Patriots will always be in any game because defensively they know how to play football. But I wouldn't, even if he is an X's and O's guy, that's cool. I think it's more the motivator part, and he's the Mike Tomlin, the man. Guys get there and they want to play for him, and he cares about everybody, and that runs deep, because the no negativity within the organization means, like, positive results and positive outcome, which means never having a losing season, never going any less than 500. But you got to win some. You got a Super Bowl how long ago? My thing is, it's just like it can turn watered down, just like this 1,000-yard receivers getting over 1,000 yards. That's starting to become watered down. Why? Because we have 30 receivers a year getting 1,000 yards. So when you're only getting, and it's to me with the Mike Evans thing, oh, he gets over 1,000 yards. Yes, but he's at 1,002, 1,020. I'm like, and he's sitting there 27th in yards in a season as a receiver. So yeah, he's going to get you 1,000 yards. He's got a few big seasons. He is a touchdown machine at times, but, like, okay, getting over 1,000, like, that's the new, like, 1,000 is the new 800. Like, your wide receiver 2 or 3 are getting 800. Like, when you get into that 12, 13, 14, 15, that's where, like, I'm impressed. But winning sometimes isn't enough when you're not winning the big ones. And so that's why I don't, man, the GOAT, man. GOAT, that's tough. That's tough.
I'm just saying it has to mean something, and probably not the goat. I don't think I'd probably find anybody who agrees with me. Probably outside of the city of Pittsburgh, but man, to never have a losing record with a quarterback, especially the last few years, the quarterbacks that he's had at his disposal, and even to an extent, it's kind of his fault because I said this like the Steelers kind of set themselves up for what they're going through right now by never really addressing the quarterback position because they always had Ben Roethlisberger. They never felt the need, like, hey, let's prepare. Even though this guy's 87 years old, let's prepare ourselves to move on from him. Kind of like actually exactly like what the Packers did in 2005. They had an aging Brett Favre who was still playing lights out at that time, was still playing at a high level at that time, but they understood this guy's going to retire soon. He's not going to be here forever. Let's go ahead and get our next guy. And just so happens that Aaron Rodgers fell all the way to 24th. I wish he would have fell one more spot because the pick after the Packers that year was Washington. And
Mhm.
we ended up drafting Jason Campbell, but I do think that had Rodgers been there at 25, that would have been the pick. But I think that there's something that has to be said for Mike Tomlin to never have a losing record, to have the quarterbacks that he's had the last 5, 6, 7 years. And I hope Mason Rudolph or not Mason Rudolph, Kenny Pickett is that guy for him. That he does start making deep playoff runs again because he's 50. He'll be 51 in March. So he has another, if he wanted to, 20, 25 years of coaching. Probably let's say 20. Another 20 years of coaching in him. Get him to around 70, which I think is where Pete Carroll's close to. Bill Belichick, he's around there.
I
So
mean, if
give
he
him,
made it all the way there and never had to lose a season, now we're having a different conversation. And I would expect within that he'd get at least one more, if
yeah,
not two. I think if you never have a losing season for the next 20 years on top of you right now, I would say you've had an adequate quarterback, you've had an adequate team where you at least get to a couple big ones, or you win one, you've been to three, something like that. I mean, if he does it like for his whole career and he coached 25, that's a different conversation. But right now, like, he hasn't done enough. Like, there's coaches with 2, 3, 4 Super Bowls. There's a coach with 6 sitting out there. Like, it's just not enough hardware for me to be like, yeah, he's the GOAT.
how many coach of the years does he have though?
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. 2, maybe.
One.
Yeah. So yeah, no, no, he ain't got enough hardware for me. I'm sorry. I can't. I
I
can't
I
rock
don't
with it.
I don't expect people to agree with me. I see the big picture.
I hear you. I hope it sits right with you. I hear you. I hope this is somewhere 20 years from now you're like, ha, I told you. But I'm with you though. If he never in his whole finishes his coaching career, like, and never had to lose this season, like I said, I would expect 1 or 2 more Super Bowls. Now you're in a different conversation. He might not have as much hardware, but he got enough, and he'd have a couple
Yeah.
coach of the years for that, and this and that. He probably has a franchise quarterback. So now you're entering a different conversation. But for what he's done right now, like 1 Super Bowl and then not going under anything less than 500, I can't. I can't give that to you.
Anyways, with that, let's go ahead and wrap it up as Georgia scores. Oh no, I'm sorry. It's just a highlight. I'm kidding. It's just a replay. They're at halftime. Georgia's up a lot to a little. TCU looks like like somebody who has just entered the Power Five in the last 10, 15 years.
Yeah, it's bad.
Um, but Mo, go ahead and tell the people where they can find you, any projects you have coming up.
Yeah, you can follow me at Mo_Cheese15 on Twitter, at Upper Flames Pod on Instagram, at Mo_Cheese15 on TikTok, and you can always check out Upper Flames anywhere you get your podcast. I'm off for the next few days, so as far as dead set on what I got coming, I don't know yet, but I know I'm gonna record at least once or twice this week. Field Stormers will be covering, talking about the national championship. Not much to talk about, just basically giving Georgia their flowers for being back-to-back national champions. And yeah, bro, as always, it's nice to link up with you.
always a fun time talking football with you. Y'all already know where you can find me, FNC Pod on Twitter, Football and Chill Podcast on Facebook and Instagram. I have Cruise Island, another Cruise Island episode. We're back for the 2023 year on Wednesday. Let me check what time I set that for because I do not know my own life. Need to get my life together at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. West Coast is the best coast. 9 p.m. Eastern Standard. It will re-air sometime Thursday. If you're just catching the end of this and you want to see it in its entirety at some point tomorrow at noon, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. It will be re-airing on all the off the ball socials on YouTube. It'll be on Twitter tomorrow as well, so you can catch that. I just put out an article this morning about the XFL and NFL merger that needs to happen but never will. Definitely interesting. It was interesting learning about how European soccer works for that article. Definitely go check that. It's a short read, probably take you maybe 5-7 minutes. Definitely a short read. Go check that out on the network. Also we have our first official off the ball power rankings for the 14 playoff teams. I just got those in from the guys today. I'm going to go through and make the graphic. So be on the lookout for that probably sometime tomorrow, if not Wednesday morning at the latest. And then Wednesday morning, we'll also be doing our off the ball NFL regular season awards, our MVP, Defensive Player of the Years. We threw a feel good story in there. So definitely be on the lookout for that. That was done by everybody, all the NFL heads at this network. They definitely worked hard. So definitely go check that out. Be on the lookout for that on Wednesday. And with that being said, hope you guys enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy the rest of this blowout over in LA, and we will see you guys next time.